Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this corporate client, and I'm going to take you through an end-to-end pretend consultation. We're going to look at somebody who's had a shoulder injury. They tweaked a 3-5 as if they rotator cuff playing sport, but they haven't done anything that's going to need a repair job or anything like that. And what I'll do is I'll take you through probably an initial and then probably 1 or 2 follow-ups. And we'll go through, and as we go through, we'll look at the corporate reporting that's required. And then at the end, I'll show you how to discharge a case, and I'll show you how to use the template letters that we spoke about this morning. And I'll also show you how you can print a set of notes if you had a request from the solicitors for a whiplash claim or something like that.
Okay.
So for our corporate clients, and only our corporate clients, we have to do initial discharge and request for additional treatment reports during the case. So if you when you have a corporate client, within 24 hours of examining them, you need to submit an initial report. Within 24 hours of discharging them, you need to submit a discharge report. This is only for corporate clients. And if you were running out of authorization code, like we looked with those funny messages this morning, you could also, through TM2, send in the request for additional treatment report. Now, from now on, I'm going to call that the RFAT. Okay? Within our company, everybody calls it the RFAT report, because saying request for additional treatment, RFAT, request for additional treatment, because request for additional treatment report takes too long to say over and over again. So everybody calls it RFAT.
Okay, good to know.
So we're going to go to the notes. So from each, when you want to write the notes for this 9 o'clock appointment, you have to right-click on the 9 o'clock appointment and go to case. When you want to do the 10 o'clock appointment, you have to right-click on the 10 o'clock and go to case. So you can only create one set of notes from each case, from each appointment. Yes? Okay. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, so right-click on the initial assessment and then go to case. Now, because we were mucking around with a triage case and a shoulder case, it will ask you which case do you want to go to. If it's straightforward and there's only one active case, the case notes will just open. But because I did a lot of mucking around with cases first thing this morning, we will go to the one that's named shoulder, and the one that's got the actual body site will always be the face-to-face case, and the one that has the body site triage and the diagnosis code will be the actual body site. That's the one. That's how you can distinguish between the 2 different types.
Okay.
So I'm going face-to-face, so I could go to case next to the shoulder case. TM2 Touch will open. Now, initially, when they designed this software, they bought, Blue Zinc are the owners of TM2, and they bought TM1, I suppose you would call it. It was called just time management, and it was the diary and the billing side of things. And then they added TM2 Touch, which is the notes side of things. They initially thought that it would be great to use touch screens and input all of our information using touch screens and on-screen keyboards. But that might be fine if you're doing 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps. But if you're trying to write some meaningful subjective assessment, you don't want to be typing it in with your finger on the screen. You want to use your mouse and keyboard because it's slow enough anyway, and using the on-screen keyboard slows you down. So you get rid of these on-screen keyboards by pressing the return key with your mouse, but they keep coming up every time you click into one of these boxes over here. Now, one of the things which I had added pretty soon on was this on-screen keyboards button, and while it's orange, you will always get those keyboards coming up. If you click it to blue, you will never see them again. So the first time you go to your notes, click that to blue, and then on that computer, you will never see those keyboards again unless you turn it back to orange again.
Okay, great.
So that's your first thing. Now, the next thing I'm going to give you is a warning. The yellow fields are mandatory.
Okay.
Yep. I can tell that this is a corporate client because only corporate clients have the report button. If it was a self-pay or an insurance, there would just be the blue background. There wouldn't even be a button there at all. And the extended details are only mandatory for corporate clients.
Okay.
So immediately, without knowing anything else, I know that this is a corporate client because of those 2 things. If that was blue and that button wasn't there, it's another type of client. So we only have to worry about the reports if the button is there.
Okay.
Now, the word of warning, if you complete one of the yellow fields, so if I do diagnosis and so I've got my body site here because we know it's a shoulder problem. I then pick the most appropriate code from the list. And we're going to say this is a non-surgical rotator cuff tear because it's just tweaked a few fibers. It's going to heal naturally. It's not going to need any surgical intervention. You always pick the most appropriate code for the body site that you've selected.
Okay.
Now, the warning is, if I now thought, oh, no, I don't want to fill in all these other mandatory fields, and you try to exit, it won't let you, okay? So if I click close case to get out, I have to fill, even if it's a load of old rubbish, I have to fill something in all of those fields with the dots next to them.
Wow, okay.
So if you're just going in to have a look, don't start anything until you're ready to finish. That's the warning. We're going to go through the whole process now, so it's okay. But I'm just telling you, if you see all these dots coming up, don't just keep trying to click close case and get out because it won't let you.
Okay. Good
the other thing which I'm going to tell you before we go any further is that the user guides, hopefully you started getting the user guides through
yes, I have,
in the emails. Now, the clinical user guides are written, one for each of these 4 tabs: admission, consultation, image, and discharge. And the user guides tell you everything about each tab. But in reality, you cannot write everything into the admission tab before you've done your consultation and recorded your subjective assessment, because you wouldn't know the injury cause, the time present, whether it was work-related, all of these things. So the minimum that you have to do on the admission tab to get the consultation and images to work, and you can see it's grayed out here, and it's grayed out here, and it's grayed out here, and it's grayed out here. You cannot go on to the notes or the body chart until you've consented the patient for examination and written consent given, yes. And again, I get a lot of people who haven't been trained. Oh, I can't create the consultation, and that's because consent given hasn't been filled in before they tried to start writing their notes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's really important. Yeah. But what I'm going to do now, just take it for read that you will have to go and do your. So let's create the consultation first. In reality, you would have to go to the consultation tab and do your subjective and possibly your objective assessment, and then come back to the admission tab to fill in the questions, because you cannot know these answers before you've done your assessment.
Okay.
Right? So that's how you would do it in reality. The way I'm actually going to train you today is I'm going to do everything about the admission tab, then everything about the consultation tab, just like the user guides are written, so I don't miss anything, if that's okay with you. But,
yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Okay.
So when you're doing the subjective assessment, are you sat at a computer and you're putting it in there?
The way I do it is when I'm doing my subjective assessment, I have the patient sitting next to me, and I go through the subject. I'll show you how to do this in a little while, but I go through my subjective, my special questions, potentially my body chart, all of the things that are questioning. I sit with the patient, both of us looking at the screen so they can see what I'm writing. And once we get into the swing of it, they're almost answering the next question because they can see it on the screen, as it were. And then what I do then, because of clinical reasoning and sort of fluidity, I then go back to my objective assessment, and I do that in the way I would have always done it, and I just make a few notes on a clipboard, and then once they're gone, I write the objective up so that it's much more free-flowing. That's the way I do it, and I think it's the best use of the time that you've got available.
Yes, that's another question. And so it's 45 minutes for a new appointment, is it?
Yes, but you are allowed to put some admin slots into your diary through the day, maybe a couple of half-an-hour admin slots so that you can write up that objective once the patient has gone, type of thing.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
You're not expected to cram it all, because it is a bit slower. I'm not going to even try to kid you that it isn't. It is a bit slower than doing handwritten notes. Yeah. But to start with, you'll be really slow, but by about 4 weeks, you'll have started to speed up, and then you're getting it all fitted in. So make sure you've got plenty of admin breaks in your diary in the first few weeks, just to take the pressure off yourself.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so let's look at the admission tab. So we've done our body site and our diagnosis code. Sometimes that will be pre-filled in. Sometimes you have to select it yourself. Okay. The diary is already pre-filled in, and it knows the date of the first appointment. We associated Mr. Ayres as the main consultant for this person when we registered them, so that has already been pulled through for you automatically. Now, you can categorize, was it a consultant referral, a corporate client, a GP referral, whatever it might be. Well, in this case, it's a corporate client, so we'll put corporate. If it had been a referral from Mr. Ayres' clinic, then you can put the date of his referral letter if you wanted to.
Okay.
And then if you've said there was a referral, you then need to say, was it a good one? I mean, sometimes we might have got clinical findings, ultrasound results, MRI scan results, and sometimes you might get that classic ultrasound, shoulder pain, ultrasound, please. So we then categorize how good we think the referral was, and we'll give them the benefit of the doubt today. The letter date field would be if you sent maybe if you found a red flag and you sent someone onto A&E and you weren't going to treat them, but you wanted to let the referrer know what you'd done, then I might send a letter at this stage and I'd date it there. But if I didn't send a letter on the initial assessment, then I wouldn't put a date in.
Okay, but for a corporate, you have to. Oh, that would be a report.
There's no referral letter. There's no referral letter. Yeah. Reports down here. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you would then come back and put your admission pain scale. So this is a 6 out of 10 pain. Injury cause, well, it was a sporting injury at the weekend. It wasn't a work-related injury. How long have they had it? 2 weeks. And you pick up the number from the time present button, number 2, and the units, days, weeks, months, or years. So they've had it for 2 weeks. Was it work-related or work-aggravated? No, it's purely a weekend sporting injury. You then get the option to put in almost like your working hypothesis into the diagnosis notes box. So I might put something like genuine cuff strain. Oops. No C-spine involvement. And one of the user guides, which is in the clinical email, is the Nuffield Health abbreviations list, approved abbreviations for Nuffield Health. So it's a PDF document. It's got all the current Nuffield approved abbreviations.
Okay.
Now, when I come to do my problem list, treatment plan, and goals, I like to be regimented. So I imagine I've discovered 3 problems. Then I would go in and put my 1, 2, 3 in there. You can highlight it and right-click copy, right-click paste. And then what I like to do, say my 6 out of 10 would be my problem 1. Maybe I've only got 100 degrees elevation and external rotators 3 out of 5, let's say. And then I can relate my problem to my plan. So my plan might be ultrasound and acupuncture. Inhumeral modes and hemics broken. And then try to make your goals smart. Obviously, we're looking for a 1 out of 10 pain in 4 weeks. Full active range of movement in 5 weeks. And I like to build it up in a structured way. You don't have to.
Okay.
You can just list them if you want to, but I like that regimented sort of feel.
Okay.
I'm only showing you how I've interpreted the system and how I use it, and you'll make your own best decisions on how you like to use it.
Okay, that's great.
Now, because this is a corporate client and the extended details button is yellow, some of these questions, not all of them, but some of them are not things we would naturally ask in our normal physiotherapy assessment. Current work status, we probably would ask that. And if you pick an at-work status, then you don't have to say what date they were first absent or when you expect them to return, because they're still at work. But if you pick an off-work status, then you do have to ask them what date did you go off work, let's say the 25th Jan. When do you expect to get them back? Well, I'm hoping to get them back to work in 4 weeks' time, so we'll put the 2nd of March. Now, this question is really important for us from a contractual point of view. The date of their first appointment is here. We know that one because it's in our diary. And we need to ask them, when the call centre booked this appointment for you, was the 3rd of February the earliest appointment that they offered you? And if they say yes, it was, you leave the date the same because it always defaults to that date. But if they say, oh, no, they offered me one on Monday, but I couldn't get a lift up there or something, then you must change it because we've contracted to offer first appointments, usually within 48 hours of them being referred to the call centre. So if we have offered the appointment within that time period, we need to record it.
Okay.
So we don't get penalties on the contract.
Okay.
So that's something you wouldn't probably normally ask. Is it the first episode of this problem? Yes or no? How many treatments do you expect it'll take to get them better? and they're very specifically, we get an inordinate number of people who need 5 sessions. And what I've been asked to say at this point is, please actually think, how many sessions do you really think they'll need? So we'll say.
Okay.
And when do you expect to discharge them? Well, my hope would be that I would review them after they've gone back to work in preparation for discharge. And now that I've filled in all of those ones that had the red dots next to them, if I click the close case button, it will now let me out. So I'm going to say, yes, I do want to save the changes. And to try and be helpful, the initial report form, before it lets me out, the initial report form will pop up on the screen to remind me to fill it in. Right. So you can click the reports button and, well, it's come up on the screen now, so you can see that happened automatically. I didn't do anything. That was just provoked by me exiting the notes. Okay. I'm just going to close. I'm going to close it down now. I'm not going to submit it at this stage, just so I can show you. Okay. So when I go out, I right-click, go to case, and this time the note should open straight away. It shouldn't ask me to select which case, and that's because I've now linked it to the shoulder case. Okay. I can initiate my initial report form by clicking the Create Initial Report as well. So if I decided not to fill it in initially, then if I click the Create Initial Report form, it will do exactly the same thing, and the initial report will come up on the screen. Okay. So I'm guessing you haven't worked in a fusion clinic before that did work for Nuffield, if these reports are new to you? Okay, fine. Yes. We have an extended network of private practices who do work for Nuffield, and they fill these reports in via an internet portal rather than they don't have TM2. Right. But my recommendation to you is always fill in your admission page before you create the initial report. And the reason being is that you can see that the working hypothesis, all of the mandatory fields have pre-populated into the report. Save you a lot of time. If you do it the other way around, the data doesn't flow backwards. So if you fill it in here, you have to fill it in again there. So I would always say, to save time, do your admission before you do your report. Okay. So you can see all of those are either fields that I filled in or mandatory fields which I had to fill in. Mm-hmm. As I go down the report, all of the fields on the report are mandatory. So you would, I'm going to cheat now. I'm going to carry on talking, but I'm not going to be typing all the time because, as you probably realize, typing isn't my... So, in fact, you type in here your sort of professional judgments, whether the guy was, willing to stop playing sport for a couple of weeks, whether they were able to do light duties for a couple of weeks, whatever it might be, anything that might be relevant to factors in physician recovery. You have to fill in a minimum of 6 characters within each box to make it valid. So if you put N/A, it won't think that you've filled enough into that box. But as soon as you put in 6 characters, then it will submit. Now, the next one, is physiotherapy, if you say, is physiotherapy appropriate? Yes, which it will be in most cases, then you don't have to fill in the if not field. But if you say no, then you do. Okay. Now, the next few things are important. When you submit this report, it will go to head office, and there's a group of physios at head office who check the reports for quality before they're sent off to the corporate clients. And there's a couple of user guides in the clinical section which I've added in. They're not my user guides. They're written, you'll notice immediately they're different. Mine are screenshots and bullet points to tell you exactly what to do in what order, whereas the user guides they've sent, they're just different. So you'll notice straight away which ones they are. But the main points that they're trying to get across and the main reasons why they reject reports is if the detail in these 2 sections often isn't good enough. Now, what they're looking for here is 3 distinct, is the way they describe it, subjective, and 3 distinct objective markers. Now, they won't, for subjective, if you put 6 out of 10 pain anterior shoulder, 4 out of 10 pain lateral elbow, they don't consider that to be 2. That's 1. Pain. That's pain. So they'd be looking maybe for 6 out of 10 pain, needing to take painkillers every 3 hours, able to sleep for 4 hours without having to get up. So 3 distinctly different markers, and the same in the objective. They accept a range of movement, a special test, a neurodynamic test. It's got to be 3 things that are of different types. And I'm trying to say to you also, over-report rather than, no, don't go mad, but if you give them lots of information, they're less likely to reject it. And obviously, as soon as you get a rejected report, you've got to waste time filling it in again. So if you can try and work out what they want from the reporting as quickly as you can, then you'll save having your reports rejected. Right. And you can see my treatment plan was auto-populated as well. All the other things, the dates and things that we filled in. Now, there's one tucked away in the middle here, effect on work and lifestyle. And I'm led to believe that affect means how they feel, and effect should be how it's affecting them. But that was a very precise person told me that. I've relayed that to head office. Whether or not they take the blindest bit of notice, well, who knows. Any changes cost money, so I guess we'll be having affect for a while. And what you're looking here is, if it really wasn't affecting them much, 0, 1, 2. If it was the type of rip-roaring nerve root pain where they couldn't sit up, lie down, near the 9, 10 end of the scale. Yeah. So this is a medium type thing. 5 out of 10. Little T. If it is 5, pick 5. But for some reason, everyone goes down the middle and just says 5. And then your last box here is how you perceive them, how they're going to be at the end of the course of treatment. Will they be able to go back to full duties, phased return, light duties, whatever. I think if you're going to send in unlikely to be able to return to work or needing a change of job role, you should have discussed those two in some detail with the patient before you send that information to their employer. Okay. So I reckon this person, because of the nature of their work, they've got a pretty physical job on a production line. They need to go back to lighter duties initially before they can go back to operating that machine. Okay. And then everything that we filled into to this line will form part of the report that goes to the corporate client. If you want to send a message to the physios at head office who are checking before you go, maybe you couldn't find a third subjective marker. Well, I would write up here, unable to identify third subjective marker. And then down here, I would confirm that again. And only the physios, if there's something that's a bit sensitive that you don't want to go to the corporate client, but you need to make it clear to the physios at head office, it goes in the notes box, because that won't form part of the report that goes to the corporate client. Okay. And then once you've filled in all of the fields, are you happy with all of those? Yes. Yeah. Once you've filled all of those in, you click the submit button, and off it goes to head office. And then once you've submitted it, you can always check. You can click the button here, and you can see their initial report awaiting approval. Okay, I'm going to close this down, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to open up another program, which is what the physios at head office use, and I'm going to approve that report in the background, because you would never see this. Unless you do that job, this is nothing you really need to know about. So I'm going to just literally go behind the scenes onto my other screen, and I'm going to open that report up and approve it. And then before we go on to look at actually writing the notes, I'm going to show you how to send in the RFAT as well, so that if you were getting short on sessions, you could request 2 additional sessions or 3 additional sessions, whatever you thought was appropriate. Okay, great. Okay, so I've approved that one in the background. So when I go back into my case now, we should see that the initial report is approved. There you go. And we now have the RFAT and the discharge. So we'll do the RFAT first. So you've used 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 4, because it's different for different contracts. So when you're getting low on authorization, you come into this report and you give the current improvement, both in your opinion and in the patient's opinion, on how they're doing. You comment on the changes in those 3, however many markers you gave at the initial report, and you comment on the change in the markers there. If you can't remember, before you open this report, if you click on the approved initial, you can reread back what was in those boxes. Great. Yeah, it's grayed out. You can't change it, but you can read it again from that button. Perfect. So you comment on the changes, you make a list of all the types of treatment you've done with that patient, and then you give your professional justification why more sessions will be beneficial for that person. Okay. You then re-comment on the current 0 to 10 pain and the 0 to 10 work and lifestyle, and you can then re-comment on whether you think they're still going to make a partial or full return to work. Okay. And I think it's the same. You can either type into the box or you can use the up and down arrows to request the additional sessions. So I've requested 3 more. And like I said to you this morning, the corporate clients won't always, depending on what level of cover the people have got or this, that, and the other, they don't always say yes, and that's when you might have to convert someone to being a self-payer, but often they do.
Okay.
Put some notes to the physios at head office, you can type it in here.
Okay.
I'll submit that off. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do anything except for approve that report now. You have to trust me on this. And then what would happen is once the 3 more had been approved, the corporate client would contact head office. Head office would do what I'm doing behind the scenes now, which is to approve the report. And then automatically what happens is an email would be sent to you to tell you that the 3 additional sessions have been added. And if I go right-click and go to patient, hopefully when I open up the authorization code tab, we will now see that there's a 3rd code there. Yeah, there we go. So for the shoulder case, there were 5 and there are none left. And we've just authorized the extra 3, which has automatically appeared. So you would receive an email to say that the authorization code has been added onto the patient, and then you can contact them to get them booked in, and you'll then be able to carry them on as a corporate client rather than having to convert them to a self-pay.
Okay.
All right. So that's the first 2 reports. There are 2 other reports. One's an SOS report, and one's a discharge report, and I'm going to cover those off when we get to the end of the case.
Okay.
So, before we go on to actually look at writing case notes, did you want to ask any questions about the fields on the admission screen or about those first 2 reports?
With their work status, if they'd had some time off work because of the injury, but before you first saw them, would you note that?
I would note it in my notes.
Okay, but not on there.
I might note it in on the report somewhere. But if they were currently at work, because it's current work status at the time when you assess them, it might be in the diagnosis notes box here, because that's going to get pulled through onto the report. You might say that they had a period of 2 weeks off work, but they've been back on light duties for 2 weeks or something like that. Because you know that field's going to get pulled through into the initial report, so you might as well add it into a known field.
Okay, great.
Okay, so ordinarily at this point you would click the new consultation button, and that's what would produce the consultation here, and they will be listed in date order. Whichever one you click on, those are the notes. It's moved it across onto the consultation tab now, and your notes are formulated in this big white box over here. Okay. Now, get into the habit of filling in these 3 fields because it scores you points on your notes audit. So it's your first time you've ever done an assessment, so it took you much longer than the 60 minutes. We're being realistic now. It took you much longer than the 60 minutes to actually achieve it because of all the the slowness of the typing and all that sort of business. But don't panic about that. After about 3 to 4 weeks, you will have sped up, really quite a lot. So that includes the time to see the patient and write all the notes? Yes, I include the full amount of time it takes me. Okay. Yes. That's how long was booked out in your diary, but you may have needed a quarter of an hour in your admin slot to finish the notes off because because you're just getting used to the system. Yeah. You're not going to get criticised, it's just being accurate about how much time spent. Progress report, well, it's their first appointment, so I always pick no improvement. That's my baseline from which I'm going to go up from. And then 6 out of 10 is my pain scale. It seems repetitive, but remember, every other time when they come in, you won't have recorded the 6 out of 10 on the admission scale on the admission page. So I just put that one in for completeness as well, and that scores you 3 additional points on your notes audit. Right. Now, from this screen, all of our assessment tools are hidden behind the new assessment button, and all of our treatment tools are hidden behind the new modality button. Okay. Once we've started to create notes, we can edit them or remove them if we put them on by mistake. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to demonstrate is how I would do my subjective assessment. So I'm going into my assessment button, and then we've got a load of different assessments in here, and the subjective assessment is this one here. So I click on that one, and then it gives me my Maitland type template. Now, don't try to follow, well, for the subjective, do follow the headings, but with the objective, I would always make my measurements, all the things I would normally do with paper notes, and then I will just fit them into the different sections, and I'll explain that to you when we come to it. So I've got my patient sitting next to me down there. They're clutching their right shoulder, so I say, is it right shoulder problem? Yes, it is. Present condition, I might put in here something like anterior shoulder pain or anterior shoulder pain radiating to elbow or something like that, because I've still got HPC further on.
Right. Okay.
If you typed it all in here, just leave HPC blank. I don't believe in double reporting.
Okay.
You know? And to start with, I was writing loads in here, and then, I've got nothing left to put in the HPC box, so I just left it blank. Yeah.
Okay.
Patients' perceptions of their needs. We might say, well, reduce pain, increase range of movement, get their muscle power back. Patients' expectations might be back to work in 3 weeks, back to sport in 6 weeks, whatever it might be. And we've added those two trigger questions in because they form part of the CSP notes audit. And they were not being covered by most people in our company. So we've just put those headings in as a memory jogger.
Okay.
Then you'd come onto your HPC, throwing injury 2 weekends ago, felt something go in the shoulder straight away, bruising, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Past medical history, usual stuff. I'm not teaching you to do an assessment. I'm just showing you how to use this thing. Medication history, any contraindications. And sometimes here I might refer to the special questions assessment, which I'm going to show you in a little while. Aggravating and easing factors. These are all just type-in boxes. So you've seen a different type of thing. You can pick from a list, or most of the answers in the subjective, you'd be just asking the patient the question and they're just typing in what they said.
Okay.
I'm using the next button every time. Yeah, you can flick between these sections. But if you do that, you have to click into the box before you can type.
Right.
If you use the next button, then it's ready to you can see the cursor's flashing automatically.
Yeah.
So because I don't look at the screen because I'm not a touch typist, sometimes if I've clicked into a button, I've typed a load before I've realised nothing's happening. Whereas if you use the next button, it'll just start typing as soon as you start typing.
Okay.
So I don't know if you're a touch typist, but I certainly am not.
No.
Social history, usual stuff, and then anything that's not covered by the normal Maitland headings, you can put it into the other section. Okay. You can review what you've written in every box, not a problem. But once you've clicked the finish button, you can't come back to this tree. You can edit in a different way, but you can't.
Okay.
It's not a problem, don't worry. Sometimes it's actually easier. So finish, and then you've got everything is presented back to you with headings.
Right.
Now, if you made a mistake, all you do is highlight that box with the left click and edit, and then you've got a text editor here. You can just go in and change your text, click enter, and it immediately changes it for you. So although you can't go back to the buttons, all of the headings of the template will be there, so you could still fill it in manually. If you got halfway and clicked finish by mistake, you could just go in and then fill in the stuff under the headings just manually by using the editor. Okay. So I probably would go to special questions next to eliminate any nasties. I always use special questions 1, and I'll explain the difference. I'll show you 1 first, and then I'll explain the difference with 2 afterwards.
Okay.
So we go into the red flag questions, ask all the red flag questions, and as long as they're all no answers, then all I do in this section is red flags all clear, yes. Going down my general special questions, diabetes, well, we are highlighting this patient was diabetic, so I say yes to diabetes, and then I get a D. Whenever you say yes to something, so if it was a special test and it was abnormal, or if it's a positive answer, then a second box comes up for you to explain. So I might say here that the patient was on metformin or diet controlled or type 1, type 2, whatever, just explain a bit more about it. Carry on asking my questions down the list, but this time I wouldn't go to general specials all clear and say yes. I would just leave it as diabetes, yes. Okay. Then I've got my 5 Ds of my spinal special questions. As long as they're all clear, special questions all clear, yes, and then finished. And now, in the old days, you had to scroll up and down this horrible box to see all of your notes. So you can see here, it presents it back quite nicely.
Yeah.
Now, another thing, when I had this button added, I also had this button added. Because then you can see your notes like they're written on a piece of paper, and you can make these, if you want more columns and your notes don't go so wide, you can see more of your notes. And you've still got your same buttons to use. So pretty much as soon as I start my assessment, I usually come into full screen view, and then it's like as if I'm putting it on a piece of paper, I can see it all. Because I can assure you, if you've got a long set of notes, scrolling up and down this box becomes pretty dull.
Yeah.
So that's that one, full screen view.
Okay.
So the difference between special questions 1 and special questions 2 is that some people believe you should answer yes or no to every single question.
Okay, yeah.
That's the difference. You can either, I do what's called, I call it exception reporting. I'm strict with myself. I ask all the questions, so I feel confident to say, I asked all of those questions, so they're all clear, or if I've marked yes to one of them, it means the others are all clear except for that one.
Yeah.
Duffield don't mind. If you want to use one or two, that's your professional judgment.
Okay.
I would say, unless you're doing a mini reassessment, avoid the one that says objective, because that's just what I would say, a very superficial assessment.
Right.
The one that's designed for Maitland shoulder is the one that's got the same name as the body site you selected initially. So when I go to shoulder assessment, you'll see that it's got much more of the Maitlandy type settings.
Yeah.
So you go in, and again, this is where if you only looked at shoulder posture, you don't write anything in spinal posture and shoulder girdle posture.
Okay.
Yeah. In observations, maybe we said there was some bruising. Yes. Pen size bruise on the anterior aspect of the shoulder or something like that. Okay. And then range of movement, they're written specifically that if you picked shoulder, then you've got flexion extension, abduction, lateral and medial rotation. If you just picked a hinge joint, you'd only have flexion extension. So when you pick the body site specific assessment, then it kind of guides you. Now, you might not have made all of those. You might have said, well, passive, there was full passive range of movement, active, limited by P1 at 100. And we've got the nice degree symbol down here, so we can use that as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll talk you through this keyboard in a second. But I might have made the decision I didn't want to look at resisted because it was too painful, so I just record that in there. Or leave it blank. If I didn't measure it or I didn't think it was necessary, then I'll leave it blank. But if I've reasoned something, then I would still put I didn't look too resisted because it was too irritable. Yeah, whatever. Okay. And again, you then just click onto each range, and you only have to fill in what you measured or what you reasoned. Yep. Before we go on, let's talk about this keyboard. One of the user guides that's in the clinical email is an expanded version of this with arrows coming off to say what we think all of the things mean. Now, most of them, I can tell you how the company wants you to use them. There's a couple that I will make some sort of wild stab at, but I generally don't. Okay? So APs and PAs, degrees and treatment, clear on overpressure, flexion extension. You've got your standard Maitland symbols, quadrant, cervical traction. We think intervertebral, or a few people have come up with an idea. If you pivot somebody for manual traction, intervertebral cervical traction, possibly. Okay. Lumbar traction. Initially, I thought it was mechanical. I thought it was mechanical lumbar traction, but then I realised it was IV, not. But that's our best guess at what we didn't design it, so we don't know. But that's our best guess on that. What I tend to do is I would put cervical traction, and then I probably would put manual PIVM C56 or something like that. Yeah. Who knows?
And then what's DRK?
Pardon? Crook lying.
Yeah, that. What,
crook lying. Crook lying. Lying on your back with your feet up on a stool.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah? I think that goes with the lumbar traction, you see.
Yeah, okay.
We haven't got a traction machine, so, I only ever manual traction anybody now. But they used to get them with their feet up at different degrees to try and pretend they were localizing it to one level. Yeah?
Okay.
Overpressure, elevation, depression, protraction, retraction, left and right, P1 to 5, grade 1 to 5, quarter, half, three-quarters. I tend to use these as supine and prone for the position I moved in. And if I was doing physiological supination or pronation, I would type physiological in front.
Right, okay.
Yep, abduction. Okay, so there's a few ambiguous ones, but generally speaking, they're pretty straightforward, hopefully. Yeah. You've then got other joints, and it gives you the options of the main other joints that would refer into that area, and you can either categorize them if you measured it as normal or abnormal, and then you might put in wing scapulae or, muscle spasm, whatever, blah, blah. And if you looked at any other joints, then you can name them and type them in directly into the box.
Okay.
For all of the peripheral assessments, it'll ask you, did you do a spinal assessment? And if you say yes, it'll say, was the spinal assessment clear? again, if you say yes, that's the end of it. If you say no, it will then give you the option to say that what you could then put in your comparable signs here, or in the palpation section, you might say, well, I pressed on the bruise on the front of the shoulder and they said ow or something. And then you can, where I normally do my comparable signs is in the accessory movements here. So this will be my comparable signs for the shoulder, and in that other box you can put your comparable signs if you did a spinal assessment. So again, I would generally pick whatever my comparable sign was, and then what I generally do is spacebar, so AP or PA or transverse or whatever it is, spacebar causes P1 halfway through range of movement. And then, hang on. And then it may be something like a longitudinal chordad. So I add that in manually. Causes P2, end of range. And I would build up a list of my comparable signs for each of the joints that I've measured. They went a bit wild on special tests. Whoever wrote this assessment in the first place was a bit enthusiastic on their special tests. Wow. They're not in any particular sensible order, but they seem to have, virtually every type of impingement, instability, you name it, labrum test. You've got something in there you can probably use. If you know all of those, you're a damn sight better physio than I am. I know all of those. But they work in the same way. Say there's one I can remember my quadrant, and all you do is you select the one you want, and then you say, is it a positive or a negative answer? If it's a positive result, you start talking about, it feel moss in the bottom of the valley or something? Do you remember this? Yeah, let's not go there. So whatever test you find, you write the details of what was positive about the test in the details box. So you're seeing quite a repetitive theme there. You pick whether it's a positive or a negative answer, and then if you pick the positive or the abnormal, then you write what was abnormal about it in the details box. Yep. And then you've got your functional tests, you've got your usual things, and this guy cannot tuck his shirt in. Finished. And then it presents it all back to you nicely. And whenever you've answered a positive or an abnormal, the answer or the extra details are indented by 6, so you can tell that those indented ones are answers to the question before as well. Okay. And for neatness, you can go in and edit. And this annoys me that the comparable signs are not lined up, so I always go in because I like things to be neat, except my office, of course. And then you've got your comparable signs are all lined up nicely against the left-hand edge. Yeah. And, pretty much all of the assessments and modalities work in the same way. I might go and do an objective musculoskeletal neuro assessment. Click on that one. Look at my upper limb sensation. It was normal. Look at my upper limb reflexes. And the way we use this one is absent, weak, brisk, and 2, normal. Yeah, so my brachioradialis, my biceps, and I think if you found there was an abnormal, you would write something in here about the difference between the left and the right or something like that, and then finished. Oh no, finished too soon. No. Okay, now what I've done here is I've unintentionally going to show you how you can correct this problem. So I finished that too soon because I didn't do muscle power. So go into your new assessment again, go back to your objective neuro, and go down to muscle power, and then you can say whether it was normal or altered and what was wrong with it. Finish. Now, if you were short on time, you could leave it like that. If you weren't, what I would do is edit, highlight and copy, edit, right-click, paste. Okay. Finished. That's added it all back together, so the whole neuro assessment's together now. Highlight, remove. Right. Yes. Okay. If you're in a big rush, there'll be no harm in leaving it because the information's all there. But if you want your notes to look good, you have the option to go back and edit it in that way. Okay. Yeah. So those are the type of things you find in here. I'm going to talk to you about pain assessment and body chart tag in a minute. And this little section here is for your follow-up, so your SOAP notes, which we'll look at when we come back to do a follow-up in a second. Okay. There's some extra stuff on here which isn't in the live. I'm not talking about that. Now, if you wanted to do a more, so you've consented your patient to say you're happy to, have it be examined, you'll need to take your top off, and it might be a bit sore, blah, blah, blah. If you wanted to do a bit more in-depth, then you can go in and say, well, the benefits of me examining you will be able to formulate a good treatment plan or whatever. Or if you're consenting them for a treatment, you might say, well, the benefits of ultrasound could well be pain relief. The risks of ultrasound, not many. Side effects, again, whatever. And what I would say to you is, if you use this assessment, don't just put yes in the box, because you'll score nothing on your notes audit. You actually need to say what benefits you explain. Ooh, should we text here? What benefits you actually explain to them. Because I think if you were in court 7 years down the line and you just put yes, the judge is going to say, well, I don't really have any idea what risks you explained to this patient before you did a grade 5 manipulation on their neck. Yeah? So if you're going to use it, actually fill in what you've told the patient in each section.
Okay.
And again, it comes back to you with nice headings, and then what you've recorded is indented.
Okay.
I might give the patient a bit of advice before they left. So I've gone into my new modality button here, and I'm going to give them some postural advice. And I would just type that out longhand, what I told them to do.
Okay.
And possibly a couple of postural exercises, add new modality, exercise advice. And if I was just giving them a couple of very simple exercises, I would probably type it in here longhand, how many to do, how often to do, when not to do them, etc., etc. Okay. If I had produced a beautiful 15-exercise physiotech document in a PDF format, I would upload that to the letters section, and in here I would write, C Physiotech in letters section, dated 03/02/16. Yeah, because again, I don't believe in double recording. If you've produced it perfectly, printed it out for them, or emailed it to them, you don't need to write every exercise out again because it's in the letters section.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'll probably go back to my assessment button, and I tend to use the P for plan rather than the plan. In the same way that P is shorter than plan. If I did a mini reassessment, I might use plan to restate my plan of treatment, plan of goals, and functional expectations. If everything's going as I expected and I'm just carrying on, I would probably put review in 5 days' time, add in TheraBand exercises.
Okay.
Yep. So you've got the two options. You can either redefine your goals, or you can just type in manually what you're planning to do next time and when you're planning to do it.
Okay.
So that's how I would build up, fairly similar to how I would have built up my notes on paper.
Yes.
Right. Okay, let's close that down. Now, we can go in and out of the case notes. We can reopen the full screen view. We can keep doing that until we click close off consultation. Close case means I'm going out, but I'm coming back. Close off consultation will turn the notebook to a padlock.
Right.
So if I do that now, close off consultation, and you can see that is now locked. I can't make any. I can still go full screen, but I can't make any changes to it anymore.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Now, don't panic about this. Every open consultation locks at 3 a.m. So it's important that you write your notes on the day when you created the consultation. Okay?
Right.
So once you've clicked that new consultation button and created the consultation, even if you've written nothing in it, it will lock at 3 a.m. And that might be a time when, like I had a couple this morning, people, had to go home, forgot to write my notes yesterday afternoon, can you reopen that consultation for me? I have to risk assess in my mind every request to make sure someone's not trying to, rewrite the notes that they've done something dodgy or something like that. But generally speaking, if it's blank, I can tell you didn't write your notes yesterday. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If there's detailed notes there, then I'm going to have to assess that, and I might have to talk to the professional head of physiotherapy about whether we actually think it's right to reopen the notes or whether they should be left as they are. But in most cases, they're just empty, so I don't really have much of a risk assessment to make.
Yeah.
Now, little hint for you. If you're getting to the end of the day and you don't think you're going to be able to write your notes for that patient, don't create the consultation.
Right.
Because when you come in tomorrow, you can right-click, go to case, create the consultation. It will be dated and timed for the date and time of the appointment, and you can do it tomorrow morning without having to contact me to open it up again. But once you've created it, you can put it back. If you haven't locked it, you can delete it back into the button again, and that's fine. It won't lock. But once it's in this list, every one that's open at 3 a.m. will be locked. So
right,
if you know you're not going to be able to do it, leave it as the new consultation and do it first thing in the morning when you come in.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, drop me an email, tell me that you've locked it, and I'll reopen it for you.
Right.
Okay, so that's the difference between closed case and closed-off consultation. And imagine that patient went home, and sometimes you get they phone up and they want you to clarify something, or they're a bit sore, and you just need to say, well, that's the reaction to me moving you around and sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's locked now. You can't add anything else, and you probably shouldn't, because that consultation is done and dusted. Mm-hmm. But if you click this button here, Add Post-Close Notes, you can then type in what the patient said to you, what you advised them, anything like that. Click Enter, and then that information is held in the additional notes box here. And every time, say they phoned up the next working day, you could put in what you spoke to them about that day as well. So in between consultations, you can actually make notes of any interactions you have, and it dates with your username what you've recorded.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you can only make one consultation from each appointment, there's not an option to add the notes again and again and again here, but you can put anything that comes in between into this section here.
Okay.
You've got a nice button down here. If you click this button, then the notes close and you get the patient on the end of your mouse, and you can book them their next appointment directly from this button here, just the same as create next appointment from the right click on the appointment menu in the diary. Okay. So that's quite nice.
So I guess if they're a new patient, you're doing their subjective assessment with them, so you would have to do them all on the next day. You couldn't leave them till the next day because you would have created the new consultant.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Unless you probably won't remember everything as well. So it's better to do them on the day. We all know that it's harder to remember what you did the next day.
I agree.
It's just that the CSP rule is that it must be completed within 24 hours of seeing the patient. But the way TM2 works is that once you've created the consultation, you have to do it that day, otherwise it locks. Yeah, so it's a slightly different lockdown. Now, I'm going to go on and show you the body chart. And the Nuffield Notes Audit tool, when it comes to talk about body charts, there's only one question, and it says, if appropriate, was a body chart present? Yeah. So you wouldn't have to do a body chart for everybody, but if they're a dramatic pain referral, this sort of thing, then you probably should. So I'm going to click my new image button. And unlike the consultation, so we've got new image. Because we've got body site shoulder, TM2 is trying to help you, and it's narrowed it down to those two body charts. And this is the one we do actually want. But if the body chart you wanted wasn't there, just click on the Show All button down here, and then what you'll get is a choice of all of the body charts that are within the system, and you can select the one you want. So you've got your full body charts, head and neck, some reflexology stuff there, legs, feet, hands, Parkinson's posture, gynae, spinal, all the usual stuff. So we'll pick the one we want. And unlike consultation, you can produce more than one body chart per date. So you could put, if it was getting a bit full, then you can add a second one on.
Okay.
And the way that all this is explained in the user guide, but the way we use TM2 in Nuffield, we use the red dot for pains, the green dot for paresthesia and numbness, lightning bolt for spasm, and tick for clear. And in most cases, we use the two dots with annotations, and that will leave us with a box with our P1 or P2 described. And for lightning bolts, I just put if we had a bit of guarding muscle spasm in the upper traps or something, I would just put the lightning bolt over the area of the spasm. And if I was clearing the spine and the other arm, I would just click and let go and click again where I wanted to clear the other joints. Okay. So I'm literally left-clicking and letting go, and then left-clicking again to place it where I want it.
Okay.
So these ones will just put the symbols onto the chart. And if I used any of these, so I'm going to define the P1, which is a pain centered around the anterior aspect of the shoulder radiating down to the elbow. So I click and let go of my dots, and then I highlight the center of P1 and left-click again. Add new pain assessment. Pain reference number, it's 1. It puts the P in for you automatically, so it will actually come back as P1. Pain type, well, it's a deep ache. There's a shooting pain to the elbow, and there's a sharp pain on elevation. Pain scale, well, we know it's a 6 out of 10, and it goes up to an 8 out of 10 on elevation. Is it constant or intermittent? It's intermittent, and it's worse on elevation. And then if there's anything else in the other section that you need to record about that pain, you can put it in, and then click your finish button. The box always appears over the image, so I click and hold it and drag it off to the side so that it's not over the top of my picture. And then I would use the dots over here to indicate the higher density of dots where the pain's worse.
Right.
And then my referral pattern down to the elbow.
Right, okay.
You can edit the text in here as easily as you can in the other text. So I might put ache, yes, deep. Shooting, yes, to elbow. Sharp, yes, on elevation. Enter, and it changes it for you immediately.
Okay.
If they had a bit of paresthesia down here or something, some weird symptom, pick up my dot, pop it on, and new pain assessment again. Call it P2. Pain type, numbness, yes. Pins and needles, yes. Pain scale, 3 out of 10. I'm not going to put a worse pain this time. Constant intermittent, it's intermittent, and it's worse as P1 worse. Finish. If you pop something in the wrong place, you can click and hold the icon and drag it to where you need it to be.
Okay.
And in the same way that you could close off your notes, you can close off your image, and if you do that, you'll get a message to tell you can't make any further changes, and then all your buttons are grayed out again.
Okay, but that's just of the image, not the rest of the consultation.
Not the rest of the consultation. The image and the consultation are completely independent from each other.
Okay, great.
Now, I used to love drawing other things, like, you know, a beautiful bit of, I don't know what it's called now, regional pain thing. Sudex atrophy.
CRPS.
I love drawing bruises and red and hot and lovely. So what I had added was the body chart tag. So if you can imagine, you have that 10 pence size bruise on the anterior aspect. You go add new pain assessment again, but this time choose body chart tag. And this time it will be called T1 rather than P1. And you can select bruise, heat, redness, scar, stiffness, sweating. Yeah. Now I'm going to, because it's a bit more graphic, I'm going to choose scar, between 3 and 6 centimeters long. And it was from a open cuff repair in 1999. Click finish, drag my box, and then I can actually draw my scar, little curvy scar across the front of the shoulder there. Yeah. So you can add tags on as well as pains. If there's things you want to demonstrate on the body chart, like that.
Okay.
Right. So we've done our assessment, we've done our body chart, we've done our initial report form. Patients come back for their next visit. So right-click, go to case. It may ask me which, no, it doesn't. It knows now that we're linked to this case. So I add my new consultation. The patients come in. Hopefully by the end of it, I'll have seen them within 30 minutes, so I'm getting faster now. They started to make a good bit of improvement, and they've dropped down to 2 out of 10 on the pain scale. Now this time, I would go in, maybe full screen view to start with, new assessment, and I start my SOAP notes now. So I record the changes in my subjective, the changes in my objective, my SIN factors, or my clinical appraisal. If the patient's aims and expectations are changed, you can also record it here. If you leave this box blank, then the aims and expectations heading would not appear. The expectations heading would not appear in your notes. So I only use that if I've done a mini reassessment and the patient's expectations have changed. Otherwise, I just use the normal SO and A. Then I might go into my treatment modalities again and add new modality, and I'm going to do some glenohumeral mobilization, so shoulder modes on the glenohumeral joint. I'm going to pick my comparable sign, longitudinal chordate, and I'm going to treat it on the grade 3. I'm going to do 6 sets of 30 seconds. And this is my double line in my handwritten notes. They've improved. And the glenohumeral elevation, 140 degrees. If there's anything else I need to write, I can put it in the other notes section. If not, finished. And it prints that prescription back nicely for me. Okay, I'm going to show you something quite traumatic now. Please don't be traumatized, because once I've shown you how traumatic it is, I'm going to show you how you get around the problem afterwards. So some of the assessments, add new modality, some of the assessments are cumbersome, and they're mainly the electrotherapies. Okay, I'm going to do this with a bit of a smile on my face now, so don't take this too seriously. Did you safely check the machine? Yes, I did. What did you do? I checked that the plug wasn't broken and that it was in date. Were there any contraindications to ultrasound? No, there weren't, otherwise I wouldn't have been doing it. Did you sensory test the patient? Yes, I did. I did light touch because I don't use a thermal dose. What did you explain to the patient? I explained to them that they shouldn't feel anything during the treatment, and that if they did feel anything, especially if it was heat, they should tell me straight away. What area did you treat? The area of P1. What type of ultrasound did you use? Standard. Large head, 3 megahertz, 0.4, pulsed, 1 to 2, for 5 minutes. Finish. Whew. That looks nice, but it's a bit cumbersome every time you treat someone with ultrasound.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, potentially, if they came back next week and the MOBs had really done well, you'd probably repeat that again. And if the ultrasound had seemed to help, then you might repeat that again, or whatever modality you had done. Now, don't lose faith. You have to do it once. But if they came back next week and you went new modality, rather than flicking across to add new modality, which is what I've done every time so far, and you can see most of the things here are more outpatient-y, or the things we use often in outpatients. And then as you go across, orthotic, CBT, blah, 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 the only one I wish I'd got further over that side was proprioception. So I do a lot of rehab after knee replacements, so I'm moving over to that side. But a lot of the things like modes and exercise and advice, they're all over here.
Okay.
But if you leave it on the most recently used tab, the last 5 or 6 things you've done with that patient will be listed. So if they came in next time and you did the modes again, but maybe you did 6 times 60 seconds, all you would need to do is just click here, highlight, edit, and change the 30 to a 60.
Okay.
And same thing with the ultrasound. If you go new modality, and you can tell with experience, you'll know that safety check, yes, and this one is for ultrasound. So you click that one, and it prints it all out for you. So all you did was change the prescription, and you gave them a 6-minute dose rather than a 5-minute dose. Job done. So although it takes a while to fill it in the first time, once that treatment is underway and you're kind of maybe what I call linear treatment, when something's working, you repeat or increase, it's then much easier. So when you're picking them up for the first time, you get them from the add new modality bit, and once you're underway, you can get them from the most recently used. Obviously, once they've gone off the bottom of the list, then you've got to type them in from scratch again.
Okay.
Right? And then, so I might give them maybe a different bit of advice or a bit of postural stuff or whatever it might be. You just pick them from here. They're all the same. They're either prescriptive, like ultrasound, or they're type into a box, like exercise and advice.
Would dry needling go on to acupuncture?
Pardon? Say again?
I do dry needling. Would that come under acupuncture?
Yes.
Okay.
So you would just say you probably don't do the sheedy, you just pop the needles in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you would say no.
Okay.
And when we come to look at the template letters at the end, there's an acupuncture dry needling consent form, which I'll show you how to produce it.
Great.
Same thing. You print off a Word document, the patient's name and date of birth and everything's all pre-populated in the automatic template. You get them to sign it, you sign it, and then you scan it back in as a permanent document.
Okay.
And then just to finish this one off, P for plan, blah, 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 whatever you're planning to do. Okay. So you just carry on that process each time they came in.
Thank you.
We'll pretend that they've been in for a few sessions and we've got them to our 1 out of 10 goal and we're going to discharge.
Mm-hmm.
So we've right-clicked, we've done our notes for today, and we've decided that today's the day where it's time to discharge them. So we would click on the discharge tab. Oh, let me show you one other thing first. You know we had a triage and a shoulder case running simultaneously?
Yeah.
Well, we can see that the tab up here says shoulder, so the notes that we're reviewing over here are the notes for the shoulder consultations. If you wanted to have a look at the triage notes from the triage physio, if you go to the other cases here, and if you double-click on the line, oh, yeah, just made save changes, yes, whichever one has the blue tick are the ones where the notes would be listed here.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no triage notes for this one because I only set them up this morning. But if you double-click it back onto the shoulder line, then that will move back down and the notes will appear here. So if you wanted to read the triage notes, you can always go to the other cases and click the line, and then you would be able to read them by clicking on the appropriate consultation over here.
Okay.
So we've got this person better now, or we've got them to a stage where they can cope on their own. And so you click the discharge button and select the discharge date. Obviously, usually you just click today, and you've got that option. When you discharge, and you just click the today button. Pain scale on discharge was 1 out of 10, which was our goal. Discharge status. Now, when you're doing face-to-face treatments, you're only supposed to use these first 2 columns of codes. And when you're doing triage service, you use the triage prefix codes.
Okay.
Yeah. So for standard triage, you use just the triage codes. And if you're doing bespoke triage for Bupa, then you use the triage Bupa codes. But you'll have separate triage training to learn all about that. For the face-to-face, please only use the non-triage codes.
Okay.
So hopefully most of our patients will be completed. Hopefully not too many will refuse to be consent or deceased. We'll get a few DNAs, obviously. Sometimes you'll only be giving out a splint or a brace or something. And you pick the most appropriate code. So we're going to say we completed this course of treatment. I think I've got the patient to a stage where if they continue with what I've advised them, they will be able to manage themselves. They think everything's fantastic and they're superhuman again. It counts automatically how many times you saw them, so you don't have to fill that one in yourself. And because it's a corporate, there's a work outcome field down here. And if they were off work at the start and you pick a return to work option, so we'll do our phased return to work, then it will ask you what was the actual return to work date, and we think we got them back to work on the 2nd.
Okay.
So if it was a non-corporate client, those 2 would not be yellow and would not need to be filled in.
Okay.
Now, one of the things which we were finding was very poorly recorded was if somebody made an onward referral. So a few months ago, they added this new button down here, and at the point of discharge, they would ask you, if you made an onward referral, that you record it here. So the 2 options they're interested in are consultant referrals and for further diagnostics. Well, we'll say we referred on to a consultant. Was that consultant based in a Nuffield hospital or not? Obviously, we'd like to direct all work back within our own network if possible. So whenever possible, try to send them to a Nuffield consultant or a Nuffield Centre for Diagnostics. What was the consultant's name? Mr. Keith. And which hospital, if you referred them back into a Nuffield, which hospital did you refer them to? And then you would select the hospital from the list that drops down.
Okay.
You don't have to click save. It's auto-remembered. Once you've typed it in, you don't have to do anything else. And once you've discharged the patient, a bit like closing the notes off with the padlock, if you want to go out and have the opportunity to come back in again, that's fine. If you want to lock it, everything, then you click close off case down here. Now, for a corporate client, I wouldn't do this, but I want to show you a discharge letter in a minute. So I'm actually going to fill something into the discharge notes box here so you can see how it pulls through automatically onto the discharge letter. So let's say discharged to complete home exercise program for 6/52, light duties 3/52. And then once I've got all of that done, I could then click close off case and it would lock everything. If you try to exit, the discharge report form will come up on the screen, trying to be helpful to remind you to fill it in within 24 hours of discharging the patient. And I generally try to do the reports at the time when they pop up because then I don't have to remember to come back to do them later.
Yeah.
And every time you submit a request for additional treatment report, another one will come. So if those three were not enough, you could submit another one.
Okay.
Now, the SOS report, this would be used in two cases. Maybe you had that person who you identified a red flag at the initial assessment and you sent them to A&E for further investigations or something like that. Or the person who had maybe 2 sessions of authorization left over and you said to them, well, you're pretty good now, I think you can manage, and they agree. And you say, well, you've got 2 sessions left. If I don't hear from you within 4 weeks, I'll discharge you. If you need any further sessions, we can still use those 2 if you want to get back to me again.
Okay.
So you select which one, and then you explain why you've chosen it and submit it. And then when it actually comes time to discharge that patient, you can then click your discharge report, and all the automated fields are filled in for you automatically, so the outcomes and that sort of thing. You then comment on the change from the initial subjective assessment markers and the initial objective assessment markers. You list all of the treatment modalities you've done here, so you might put your dry needling, your clean hormones, your home exercise program, whatever it might be. You then comment on the effect on work and lifestyle again, and again, it's really dropping nicely. And then you would then make any professional comments about, the advice about further exercises, any short-term adjustments to the workplace or light duties. You can make those comments here. Once you've got it filled in, click the submit button. That's your commitment to the corporate client done. And again, as I said, you can review those reports. If you click on the initial report, you can read what you had submitted, 6 weeks earlier. And one of the things which is actually nice on this report is that although they're grayed out, if you had a beautiful list of subjective and objective markers here, you can actually highlight and copy that.
Oh, that's good.
And then when you do your discharge report, you can just paste it into the subjective and you can put the changes. You can only copy one field at a time, though.
Okay.
You can't copy the whole report, unfortunately. Okay, so that's your end-to-end for a corporate client. We'll now pretend that this wasn't a corporate client and it was just somebody who either walked in off the street, GP, consultant referral, somebody who you might want to send a discharge letter to.
Okay.
So that's why I filled in the discharge notes section here, because my favourite letter, I'm just going to open it now because it takes 20 to 30 seconds to open. My favourite discharge letter is the OPD discharge letter to referrer. Because if you were busy, you could literally put a piece of headed paper in the machine, press print. I normally don't do that because in one point, as you'll see, it just pulls the discharge code through. And if you put, 6 or 5A, able to self-manage or something like that, is not good grammatical English for the GP. Okay? Yeah. So I normally well, you'll see in a minute. So that's opened up. So most of the letters that you will find beneficial are in this initial section, admin. And for your acupuncture consent, I'm just going to double-click the acupuncture consent form now. So it's a double-click. And in a few seconds, hopefully, Word will open. It might come on the smaller screen, and if it does, I'll just pull it across onto the bigger screen.
Okay.
So you can see it better. And what this acupuncture consent form is a patient information form. You give it to the patient to read, tells them what acupuncture is, what the likely outcomes are, and if they've got any medical conditions that are listed there, it tells them to tell you about that. And then once they've read it through, and you've answered, I'll just bring that onto the other screen. So I'll just bring it onto the proper screen. Okay, so what is acupuncture? Does acupuncture diamine have any side effects? If you have any of these medical conditions, please tell your physiotherapist. And then you sign to say that you've explained the procedure and the benefits, blah, 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 to the patient. And you can see here your name and your job title, and the date is already filled in. The patient's name, their date of birth, and the date is already filled in. So all you need to do is sign here. They need to sign here. And if they used an interpreter, then the interpreter must sign and put their name as well. So it's very nicely prepared so that all you have to do is literally fill in the important parts, scan it, and then reattach it to the letters section like we showed you this morning.
Yeah.
The one I really like I don't do acupuncture anymore. This one, OPD discharge letter to referrer. Double click. Word will open again. And this is the one where if you're in a big rush, bung a bit of headed paper into the printer and press the print button. That will open in a few seconds, and then you'll see it hopefully on the right screen. Okay, so today's date, addressed to Mr. Ayres. Mr. Bosch's details are here. Your clinic location's pulled through automatically for you. Many thanks for referring Mr. Bosch to Nuffield Health Exeter Hospital on this date. They were discharged on this date. They attended 2 appointments. This is the bit I normally tidy up a bit. Put that into English. My discharge summary from the discharge page is pulled through automatically. My name would be here. So in all reality, if you were in a big rush, headed paper, print. Love it.
That looks good.
So once you get underway, which clinic are you going to be in?
Well, I'm covering
a proximity site, yeah? Yep. Well, if there's any regular letters that you personally like to send out on a regular basis, if you send me the bit that's between the patient's name and the signature box, I can put that in for you. And anything that's possible to automate, like admission date or discharge date or anything like that, the letters can either be addressed to the patient or to the medical contact. And what you do, before you produce your letter, if you're sending it to a medical contact, you either select Mr. Ayres or Dr. Payne, or, if there's only one, you can't do a CC. So if you wanted to send it to both of them, you'd have to produce it to Mr. Ayres first, and then produce it for Dr. Payne second. But each one will come out with the different address on it.
Okay.
Yeah? But this only works if you've associated the medical contact with the patient in the registration page.
Right.
Yes? So, but once you've, I mean, I love it because, I don't like wasting any time typing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And if you've got personalised letters, then I could make you a folder somewhere where we could just tuck your couple of letters away so you knew exactly where to go to find them. But a lot of people survive just by using the admin letters here.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of consent forms, and you've got OPD admission letter if you needed to send a letter when you examined the patient, OPD discharge letter. Yeah?
Okay.
And then this one is if you wanted to refer someone back to their GP, you can use that letter. So that covers a lot of the, it's a lot of the stuff that we do in outpatients anyway.
Yeah.
And if you want to use outcome measures, there's a lot of outcome measures. Some of them are in the basic list here. There's some more specific ones are up here for you. And they pre-populate with the patient's name and TM2 number and date of birth. So that's all pre-populated onto the form for you as well.
Okay.
Something to have a little play around with. The tree that you find in the letter section of the notes is much more comprehensive and powerful than the tree that we saw in the letter section in the patient registration. So I pretty much only use the patient registration for importing docs. If I'm writing a letter or using the outcome measures, I always do it from the case notes. And the reason for that is that the letter section in the patient registration could only pull data from the patient registration fields. The letter section here can pull data from the registration and from the fields in the case notes as well.
Okay.
So you can get much more value from your template letters here. All right. So there's a whole user guide on how to use the template letters section. And as I say, if you have a letter that you use regularly, if you send me the Word document, then I will convert it and automate it for you, and I'll tuck it away somewhere in a little folder so you know where to find it.
Amazing, thank you.
Okay, so we're nearly there. The final thing, which I'm going to... Oh, one other nice little thing. If you're in the notes and you don't want to close the notes to go to the patient registration, because you can't, yeah? If you wanted to, that little green man is patient registration.
Oh.
So you can get to it without having to close your notes.
Okay.
The green man there.
Okay.
So the last thing, you've got that letter from the solicitors asking for a copy of the notes, and you've got your associated release document signed by the patient. Those would be things you would scan and attach into your letter section. you've done all of that, and you've now got to produce the set of notes. So you open up your case notes, press the print button, and if you click print whole case, what that will do is it will print all of the written sections of the notes, but not the body charts. So you need to print the whole case, print preview will open, and you can read through the notes here, and I'll just go through a couple of the pages with you. So the first page that's open, that's your admission screen data, problem list, treatment plans, all of that sort of stuff. Those are your post-close notes that you added. And then as you flick through the pages, you'll see you've got your shoulder assessment, objective neuro, all of those things that we did. Then you've got your SOAP notes, and when it prints back, when we wrote it, the P was after the treatments, but when it prints back, you get the SOA and P first, and then the treatments afterwards. I don't know why, but that's just the way it happens. Yeah. And then at the very end, you've got your discharge page with your outcomes and any discharge notes that you put into the discharge notes box.
Okay.
So once you'd read it through and checked that everything was good, you click the print button, and that would print out. You could get that ready for the solicitor. But you've got body charts here, so you must go back to the print button again. If you leave it as print image current, it will only print the one that's highlighted orange.
Right.
If you print images all, then it will print them all. So I always flick it to all, print images. You then get a print preview of the body charts, and again, you press the print button. It'll print out on your printer, staple it together with the written notes, put it in an envelope to the solicitors with a bill.
Okay.
Okay. And again, there's a whole user guide on how to print, and it goes through both the printing the written section and the printing the body charts exactly as I've just explained it to you now.
Okay.
We're done.